Gilda, are you decent? Me? Yeah, you. Welcome, Amato Mios, to another episode of the top 10 favorite and from what I believe are the best performances by some of the greatest actresses of all time. Sure, I'm decent. I'm starting from 10 and then zipping my way up to number 1. And I'm a little better than you think, Mr. O'Brien. I have seen every film attainable of every artist here, so every list here comes from truthful, sensual, and serious accuracy. Mi amigos y amigas, you know what month this is, right? Not just San Gennaro Festival time, but that's right, it is National Hispanic Heritage Month. And though the voting was split on the Patreon page, this month's winner was picked on the biggest popularity and desire. And this artist is full of desire. She is glamorous. She is breathtaking. She is the love goddess herself, Rita Hayworth. Rita was born as Margarita Carmen Cancino in Brooklyn from a family of dancers, most notably her father being Eduardo Cancino, who was of Spanish descent, with her mother Volga of Irish descent. Rita said herself that from the time she was 3.5, as soon as she could stand on her own 2 feet, she was given dance lessons. Her childhood wasn't exactly conventional, rehearsing every day of her life, performing with the family as the Four Cancinos on Broadway by the time she was only 5 years old. Her father moved the family to Hollywood to make a big entrance in the pictures with Margarita, forming a dance studio and then performing at nightclubs in Tijuana when Rita was only about 16. On one lucky night, Winfield Sheehan, the studio head of Fox, saw her perform, and her door to the picture business got even wider. But of course, her look was still so exotic with her black hair and bigger frame that even when she was bought by Columbia Pictures, the studio she would really make famous, she was cast in all foreign supporting roles. Studio head of Columbia, Harry Cohn, would play a humongous, giving and yet devastating role in elevating and basically creating the star that was Rita Hayworth, adopting her mother's maiden name and shortening her first name, giving the image of a classic American artist. Not to mention, changing her hair color from black to red, losing weight, and getting electrolysis treatment to raise her hairline. Today, many people can be displeased with how Rita was forced to change her appearance, who she was, so to speak. But at the same time, we all know this isn't the first artist to be created out of the studio system. Joan Crawford, anyone? This is clearly what the studio system wanted to do. Give the audiences a star to marvel at, root for, idolize, fulfill their innermost desires. And we can name star after star who are in that category, but no one who embodies it through and through like Rita Hayworth. To this day, ladies and gentlemen, Rita Hayworth remains among AFI's top 20 greatest female movie stars of all time. Not to mention countless other influential magazines and film organizations constantly listed as one of the sexiest and most beautiful movie stars of all time. Every time you watch Rita, she grabs you by force, whether you are male, female, trans, non-binary, you are captivated by her knockout beauty, her passionate dancing, and charming personality. You will hear countless times that Rita probably wasn't the best actor. But I say, hogwash, people! She may not have been a Barbara Stanwyck or Joan Crawford. But let me tell you something. When you examine each dance sequence she pulls off magnificently, there is every bit of artistry and acting in that. For dance is one of the greatest art forms and expressions of human emotion ever. On top of that, examine closely all the simple and small moments of drama she embodies beautifully in certain pictures, and you are blown away with what this woman accomplished. I mean, why do you think the brilliant auteur Orson Welles and Prince Ali Khan married her? She was utterly incredible. Once again, we're only covering film, but I'd be damned not to shout out her phenomenal TV performance in The Carol Burnett Show, with their musical numbers together and their hilarious Brown Derby restaurant sketch with Rita getting directed by Carol. It's one of those cases where you didn't think this amazingly gorgeous movie star couldn't make fun of herself. But once again, when you take a tour on all of her musicals, all her films, you see the essence of both comedy and drama spiced up nicely by her charming persona. Director Ruben Mamoulian said it greatly when describing Rita. On the screen, if an actor can move, he needs little else for a successful career. Hayworth moved better than anyone else I have ever seen in film. The camera responded to her movement as it did to Garbo's intelligence. And that's exactly it. Rita was able to grab you with those beautiful nails she always had and put a sensual and yet exciting spell on you every time you escape in film. So keep your epigrams to yourself, can't you? As we put the blame on Mame and talk the top 10 best performances of the beautiful love goddess herself, Rita Hayworth. Now to start us off at number 10, Pal Joey. Not a bad adaptation of the classic Broadway musical, which started out as a novel and became the great musical by Richard Rodgers and Lorenz Hart, with Gene Kelly in the lead role. With the film being in development hell, producer Harry Cohn gave the lead role of Joey not to Kelly or Kirk Douglas, but to old Blue Eyes Frank Sinatra. Here he is as the fast-talking, slick, charming crooner who comes to San Francisco and seems to fall for a naive chorus girl played by Kim Novak. But then he sees an old flame, Vera, Rita Hayworth. She used to be Vera with The Vanishing Veils. She was once a stripper and now a rich widow. And now it's hard for Joey to choose. I mean, hey, it's understandable. Look at these two. Rita was only 39 years old when she did this film, but it's funny how they chose her to play this cougar-esque role, considering she was only 3 years older than Sinatra. Marlene Dietrich, who was 56, was offered this role, for crying out loud. When it was first in development with Gene Kelly, like I said, Rita was going to play Novak's role. But look how the turntables have... Yeah. Rita does rise to the occasion for this role, and she shows a great amount of maturity and power as Vera, and of course, some sexy numbers as you can imagine. Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered being among the best, even though, famously, Rita's singing would always be dubbed, this time around by Joanne Greer, who would dub her in 2 other pictures. Considering its changes from its source material, it's still worth a watch, winning the Golden Globe for Best Musical, nominated for 4 Oscars, and Rita is truly gorgeous in one of her last films where she received top billing over Sinatra. Since this was a picture produced by Columbia, Sinatra claimed Hayworth was Columbia Pictures and earned every top billing. And he's certainly not wrong. Numero Nueve. You'll Never Get Rich. The famous first of only 2 collaborations between Rita and the amazing song and dance man, fredastaire. Rita is a chorus girl who is lightly pursued by Broadway producer Cortland, played by Robert Benchley, and gives her a diamond bracelet. However, to avoid any trouble with his wife, he forces Robert, a phenomenal dancer played by Astaire, to date her and build the illusion he's the only one dating her. Not such a hard thing to do since Robert is blown away by her dancing skills and her headstrong attitude, but many things like the war and another boyfriend seem to halt the romance there. Fred has famously said of all of his famous dance partners, Ginger, Judy Garland, Sid Charisse, Audrey Hepburn, Betty Hutton, Rita Hayworth was Fred's personal favorite and has gone on record saying she was the best dancing partner he's ever had. Fred actually knew Rita's father, Eduardo, so it was a great full circle to be dancing with his friend's daughter and to see how she grew as an artist. And it was a tremendous deal. This was Rita's first big breakout starring role, which showed Harry Cohn and the public how much of a star she really was. Fred and Rita's numbers in this picture are to die for, like the great classic rehearsal top duet, and the So Near and Yet So Far number just adds an extra Latin flavor. The film itself is silly and fun, with some witty dialogue well played by Hayworth, and so this became the great example of a double threat by Rita. Months later, after the film's release, her famous photo in the silk and lace would become a huge deal. That after Pearl Harbor and America went to war, 5 million copies would be sold and become a fueling sensation for soldiers all across the globe, thus making Rita one of the greatest quote-unquote pinup girls ever. So let's say the whole world got rich in spirit on that one. Number 8, My Gal Sal. Oh, what a fun Oscar-winning and gay musical this is. And I'm speaking in an old-fashioned tongue in this case, if you get my drift. With Rita as Sally Elliott, the Sal in question, and darling of Paul Dresser, played by Victor Mature, who was a real songwriting artist who famously wrote On the Banks of Wabash, the title song, and others featured in the film. This film is a musical biopic of Dresser and his romance with his songstress, Sally, which carries on in a dramatic musical drama and silly romantic comedy, which everyone loves, right? Rita is utterly precious and gives so much to the character of Sally, who is actually a fictional character. The Sal Dresser was referring to was allegedly a prostitute in a brothel, but that's beside the point. Rita was destined to play Sal since co-star Carol Landis was passed down to a supporting role because she wouldn't dye her hair red. So off Rita was borrowed from Columbia to work on this Fox production, and wise decision that was. Betty Grable, Irene Dunn, and Mae West apparently turned down the role as well, which gives more of a great opportunity to Rita to showcase more of her fun and delightful dancing, and a certain amount of great scenes of great drama work, I must say. Once again, Rita's voice was dubbed this time by Nan Wynn, but Rita's passion and love shine through graciously with this picture, bringing out the best in Victor Mature as well. Number 7, Separate Tables. I almost wish this was much higher because of how much of an effective and daring drama of a film this is, but more importantly, how beautifully moving and heartbreaking Rita Hayworth's performance is, which was a little against type. Based on the play by Terence Rattigan, we have an all-star cast checked into the Hotel Beauregard on the south coast of England, and we are navigated through each one of their lives and challenges. Previously talked about Deborah Carr's performance in her own video, but Rita here gives some of the best work she has ever given at the time when her star power was really fading, even though she received top billing on the poster, second billing in the opening credits. People used the excuse that she was 40, and with her alcohol abuse. Her looks were drifting away. In spite of that, though, in a way, it adds such a tragic and haunting touch to the character of Anne in this case. She comes already engaged to another man, but still longing for John Malcolm, played by the overly articulate Burt Lancaster, who was also producer on the film. Using his own production company, Burt wanted to call the shots, so he ended up firing Laurence Olivier as director and brought on Delbert Mann, and then stepped into the role of John himself, which was not originally planned. The chemistry between Rita and John certainly does work, even though I always felt Lancaster really miscast himself here. But Rita sells it so passionately in all their scenes together, like at the dining area. You just feel for her, even when she doesn't say a thing. Rita's role was originally going to be played by Vivien Leigh since Olivier was directing. But you can say it all turned out well. Nominated for 7 Oscars, winning 2 for Wendy Hiller and David Niven, of course, but none for Rita. It would have been nice to see her nominated for her performance, but c'est la vie. Number 6, The Loves of Carmen. Oh boy, talk about a film with mixed emotions, mixed reviews, and mixed ethnicities? Call me crazy, but I honestly think Rita gives a soulful, fiery, and passionate portrayal of the famous novella character Carmen, based specifically on the work by Mallarmé, and not Bizet's classic opera. This was first pitched to Columbia by Orson Welles, with Rita starring, but Harry Cohn turned it down instantly because he always had a disdain for Welles. But only a few years later did Cohn revisit the idea, after Rita and Orson divorced, and here she explodes on the screen as the addicting temptress. Let's be honest, Glenn Ford is horribly miscast as Don Jose, but pioneering actor Luther Adler, brother to Stella Adler and one of the founding members of the group theater, gives very nice support to Rita in this somewhat mixed melodrama. Obviously, the greatest attraction of the film is Rita. This is her film, and having her father in the production as choreographer gives it such a valuable essence of Spanish dance, which Rita excels in. This time she was dubbed by Anita Ellis, but her dialogue is all her, and all of her dramatic moments in the film have such power that it becomes another example of how much depth she could bring to a role, especially one that has such a deep-cut connection to Rita's own on-screen persona in film at this time. Unfortunately, an affair between she and Glenn was still going on during this picture, which resulted in Rita needing to get an abortion since it was Ford's. Though this Oscar-nominated pick may not be the best Carmen adaptation out there, it is certainly not the worst, but it is worth seeing for Rita's fire. I mean, she was even known as the California Carmen at one point in the press, so it works perfectly. Numero 5, The Lady from Shanghai. That's right, it is most definitely deserving to be at number 5, and I am not ashamed for it. The major collaboration between husband and wife, Orson Welles and Rita Hayworth. This mixed bag of a film noir has a fascinating development story, which I'll save for another video for you-know-who. But Orson and Rita were on the last straw of their marriage while making this film about an Irish seaman who takes on an odd job of sailing a fancy yacht actually owned by Errol Flynn, funny enough, where he is taken aback by the drop-dead gorgeous and mysterious Mrs. Elsa Bannister, played by Rita. O'Hara, the seaman, then gets caught up in a complex murder plot which even sends the audience's heads in a topsy-turvy. For those of you that know the history of this project, it's not very positive, and to this day the film is met with such critical division. But I will always be one to defend the artistry of Orson Welles and his continuous fight with producers. Among those positive outlooks on the film, Rita Hayworth gives a viciously splendid performance as the dangerous femme fatale, Elsa. Of course, there was controversy with Orson having Rita chop off the lot of her red hair and dye it beach blonde. Harry Cohn having the biggest meltdown, of course. But Rita can make any style work beautifully. Apparently, audiences were not ready for this change, but contextually within the story, Rita is so electrifying. With all of its issues, production problems, etc., The Lady from Shanghai is still absolutely worth seeing, mainly for Rita's hand at stretching herself as an artist and giving the world of film noir a new femme fatale to enjoy. Number 4, You Were Never Lovelier. Yes, I wish this was certainly much higher, because here we have Fred Astaire and Rita's second collab together, which is definitely their best film together. Combining the great music of Kern and Mercer, this 3-time Oscar-nominated gem features Rita as the second eldest daughter of a nightclub owner who hires a petty gambling American dancer, Astaire. Is there ever a time where he's not playing a dancer? Anyway, Astaire to perform at his eldest daughter's wedding, and much like Taming of the Shrew, Rita, as Maria, doesn't want to get married like her sister, which angers her younger sisters because they got boyfriends. Having a personality like the mind of a refrigerator, Fred is absolutely smitten with Maria, but she won't have any part of it, and thus the taming and dancing commences. Apparently this was remade from an Argentinian rom-com entitled Los Martes Orquídeas, and the Latin setting definitely shows off Rita's strengths as a dancer, which was a little bit of a challenge for composer Jerome Kern and Astaire, apparently. But Astaire was all for forming new steps to fit the style. This film also is a clear example why Rita was Astaire's favorite dancing partner, because he was just blown away on how fast she could pick up the steps. They'd start in the morning, during lunch she'd be rehearsing the math in her head, and when they got back, she'd have it down pat. And it means something if Fred Astaire can be hit with moves and discipline that Hayworth possessed. Of course, the I'm old-fashioned number is just gold. You literally think Fred and Rita are floating practically, and their partnership is something just more magical than even with Ginger, I have to say. Sorry, Ginger. The film wasn't that big of a box office success like their first film together, but it always remained personally one of Rita's top favorites of her films, and you can't deny why. Number 3, CoverGirl. What a classic in its own right, with Rita starring as Rusty Parker, a beautiful up-and-coming dancer who wants nothing more than to be a Broadway star, and she enters a CoverGirl contest for Variety magazine, and what do you know, she actually gets the opportunity when Otto Kruger shows up at the Brooklyn nightclub, where she performs with her mentor and boyfriend Danny, played amazingly by Gene Kelly. He worries so much that she's going to forget all about him when she moves up to the big time, But will she follow her heart? This 5-time Oscar-nominated musical extravaganza, winner for Best Score, again showcases Rita as the musical legend she is, with technically playing 2 roles here. Rusty Parker, but then playing the character's grandmother, Maribel Hicks, in the past, when she was a showgirl. The partnership of Rita and Jean is stupendous, and with Jean pulling the strings of choreography, fashioning it thus in a groundbreaking fashion. The Make Way for Tomorrow number alone is the most magical construction of a number you would ever see in musicals, with that one-take sequence, and once again, more props and kudos to Rita to carry on those steps with good old master choreographer Jean, bless him. Also, this film remains the greatest showcase of comedy for Rita as well, which needed more chances to do so. You talk about star power, the film luxuriates in the beauty of Rita. Number 2, Miss Sadie Thompson. I'm not sure if this is a big surprise, but ladies and gentlemen, I implore you to take another respective look as you see Rita take on the infamous role of Sadie Thompson, thrice adopted by amazing actresses, starting with Gloria Swanson's Oscar-nominated portrayal, my personal favorite Joan Crawford in Rain, but also Francine Everett in Dirty Gertie from Harlem, USA. So yes, Rita's portrayal as the bar dame with a tainted and promiscuous past and is now greeted by a missionary played pretty well by Jose Ferrer, who suspects her of being a fugitive while at the same time being courted by Aldo Ray. You are blown away by the ability of Rita to tackle such a complex role. It was the producer's goal to give Rita a role that was unglamorous, so to speak, even though Rita can't help but look gorgeous no matter what she does, adding on incredible dance numbers in that bar indeed. At 35 years old, you believe every action she gives as an artist of movement. Her body language tells more than the words that come out, and that's the power of great acting right there. When you see it there, when you see it in their body, not to mention the small, simple, and powerful close-up moments Rita has, are so damn effective, it's honorable. I love the fact we have 2 actors of Hispanic heritage in the lead roles here as well, Jose Ferrer being Puerto Rican and Rita being Spanish, and they definitely give a lot to their scenes together, especially the awful climactic confrontation at the end of Act 2. For all of its shortcomings, Rita still gives a powerful performance and has been claimed by legendary TCM host Robert Osborne himself. Rita was the definitive Sadie Thompson. Okay, my friends, here are some honorable mentions. Circus World, the only film where Rita Hayworth was nominated for any kind of accolade. In this case, a Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Comedy/Musical. Even though there's really very few laughs in this one, which was kind of a cursed production from the beginning. Directed by the tyrant Henry Hathaway and starring John Wayne as a Buffalo Bill-like Wild West circus star. He buys a bankrupt traveling circus troupe, and after becoming successful in the States, he wants to take the troupe to Europe, secretly wanting to find his long-lost love, Lily, played by Rita. Once he finds her halfway through the film, how will he explain to his beautiful daughter, played by Claudia Cardinale, oh my gosh, she's so gorgeous, that Lily is her mother? It had been famously speculated at this time that Rita was suffering through her early stages of Alzheimer's during the making of this film, with often being late on set, forgetting her lines, and showing up apparently intoxicated and abusive to the cast and crew. John Wayne said he was excited to work with her until all this went down. But despite all of its problems, Rita definitely gives some honest moments in her somewhat off-kilter scenes with John Wayne. The Story on Page 1, which is a very little-known showcase of Rita again in a valiant effort of her dramatic chops in a courtroom drama written and directed by the great pioneering playwright Clifford Odets, which you would never imagine a project with both Rita Hayworth and Clifford Odets together, but considering her role as a plain, simple housewife who's in love with Larry, played wonderfully by Gig Young, she does pretty well. An accidental death of Rita's husband puts both she and Young on trial, and Rita has Anthony Franciosa to defend her, and thus becomes a full-length feature form of Perry Mason. I do have to say, the supporting actors here steal this film, with Mildred Dunnock as Gig Young's mother, And the great acting teacher, Sanford Meisner, as the prosecuting attorney. Holy cannoli, he's fantastic. Even though the film itself is quite dull, and Rita's performance can be seen as fabricated, but you can see in her simpler moments on screen, there is so much going on within her eyes. They came to Cordura, an adventurous and effective drama with Gary Cooper leading a band of soldiers back to Cordura, where one of them is to be rewarded with the Medal of Honor after the charge of Pancho Villa in 1916. Rita Hayworth is their prisoner, for she assisted the enemy, and all along their journey she might be indicted to danger and harm herself by the other so-called heroic soldiers. Again, this film is another great example of the simple and small moments of drama that Rita can bring to the story. And though the chemistry between she and Gary Cooper isn't quite up there, phenomenal writer and director Robert Rossen brings out a significant essence of pain within Rita's performance. Tonight and Every Night, which showcases Rita in one of her best dance performances in film, quite frankly, with the You Excite Me number, which more so excites the audience more than excites Rita, let me tell you. The whole number is fantastic and sexy, which kind of excuses the other dull factors of the film, about a Life magazine reporter doing a retrospective on a theater in London that never missed an opportunity or a performance during World War II, countering back to the romance between Rita's character and a fighter pilot played by Lee Bowman. The theater is actually loosely based on the Windmill Theatre in Soho, part of the West End in London, which is lovely. Extra kudos has to be given to Rita for being pregnant with her first child, Rebecca, when production started. So they filmed her musical numbers first and did everything they could to hide her bump as filming progressed. Nominated for 2 Oscars, including for Best Song, Anywhere, the film remains a must for Rita fans, no doubt. The Strawberry Blonde. Oh, what a fun picture this is, where it features, only too briefly, Rita using her own singing voice. Allegedly, this is the only picture where her actual voice is featured, which is such a shame. She wasn't so amazing on the mic, but she can make you believe she was. Not only that, this film marks the first time she was ever featured as a redhead in the humble year of 1941. The makeup and wardrobe department didn't know what to do with all the hair since it was still the black shade. But once the image came back, director Raoul Walsh knew he had his quote-unquote find. Based on the play One Sunday Afternoon, which was made into the 1933 film with Gary Cooper, you have Jimmy Cagney here, having flashbacks about finding love in his hometown. He was really smitten with the strawberry blonde in question, Virginia Bush, played by Rita, but his friend Amy, played lovingly by Olivia de Havilland, might be the one for him. It is one of those purely enjoyable rom-coms that anyone would enjoy, and I remember one of those dear first discoveries of Rita Hayworth myself, being much more than just eye candy here. She is a charming, charming artist. Number 1, without a doubt, mi amigos y amigas. It's Gilda. How on earth can it not be? I mean, the film and performance that clearly seals Rita Hayworth's power and influence on Columbia Pictures, just from her simple introduction in the film with Gilda, are you decent? And the sexiest flip of the hair ever in film. And her response, me, utterly amazing. I remember the first time I ever saw this film and how my and thousands of hearts exploded when we saw that iconic image. It still remains among the most iconic images in film and cements Rita Hayworth as one of the most sexiest stars in film history. Why do you think Stephen King included her name in his famous novel, Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption? It becomes a symbol for freedom for Andy. Or where do you think the inspiration for Jessica Rabbit came from? I mean, it was a combination of Julie London, Veronica Lake, Lauren Bacall, and Rita, but producers confirm it was mostly Rita as Gilda here. This movie to this day says it all, and for being a simple little story of a film noir of a degenerate gambler getting an opportunity in Buenos Aires to find out his boss is married to an ex-lover who's just as dangerous as he is. It's quite fun. Rita Hayworth makes it completely worth the price of admission, and out of the 5 films she and Glenn Ford did together, this is their best collaboration, easily. Rumors had floated around that they were having an affair while shooting, which drove Harry Cohn crazy, so he bugged their dressing rooms to find out what was going on. A lot of good that does indeed, because Glenn Ford's and everyone's blood heats up when you see Rita perform the classic numbers Amado Mio and Put the Blame on Me, which once again, she's dubbed by Anita Ellis. Gilda has it all. Seduction, class, smarts, talent, and balls even. Moments of drama from Rita worked thrillingly, which officially skyrocketed Rita's success from here on out. Even striking a deal from Cohn when Rita formed the Beckwith Corporation, so she could collect 25% of the net profits from the remaining films of her Columbia contract. You're good, yo. Her power was still so huge that even her character's name was placed on the 4th atomic bomb, along with a cutout image of her from a magazine. Rita was quite offended, as you can imagine, even though it was meant as a compliment. You would have fans all across the globe greet her not as Rita, but as Gilda. You know, it's amazing that Rita always said she never looked at herself as a sex goddess, but a comedian who could dance. And that is very, very true. Even though she is mostly remembered for sex appeal, she has done amazing good for the world in bringing awareness to Alzheimer's disease, which she herself suffered and ultimately died from in 1987. Suffering through this horrible disease, which had been forgotten practically, and many people thought it was her alcohol abuse, which was there, but Rita became the first public face of Alzheimer's and grew to more awareness, especially thanks to her daughter, Princess Yasmin Khan, who was able to raise $1.8 million at the Rita Hayworth Charity Gala in 1999. Rita certainly had demons, which every artist does, which did start when she was a young girl. One thing I did not mention is how her father Eduardo had been allegedly sexually abusing her when she was only a child. When you think about how her marriages were still met with dissatisfaction, it brings such hardship in our own hearts. But in light of all the challenges, Rita was still the brightest and sweetest human being anyone could ever know. Everyone would think she was this great sexual Gilda personality, and come to find out, she's the opposite. And that's the great sign of a great actor right there. Rita Hayworth will always remain one of Hollywood's greatest treasures, one of cinema's greatest gems, and one of Hispanic culture's greatest representations. All right, Johnny, let's go home. But first, tell me, do you agree with my picks, my friends? What are your favorite performances of the love goddess, Rita? Share in those comments below. I love it to pieces to hear from you guys. Click like if you like this, subscribe, tell all your friends and neighbors. I sure do hope you do talk to your neighbors. Remember, more specialized content is coming to the Patreon page when you subscribe, especially with first priority voting. And until next time, my dear friends, thank you so much for watching, and try not to put the blame on Mame this time, huh?